Hello, my name is Paige Flinchbaugh, and I researched the political us versus them mindset, the transformation of polarization through political tribalism in America. On March 15, 2019, a gunman killed 50 people and wounded 50 more at 2 mosques in New Zealand. According to National Public Radio, the gunman live-streamed his first attack and published a 74-page white supremacist manifesto. ABC News addresses debate over terrorist motivations and whether the terrorist should be classified as a lone wolf who is not a part of any extremist group. In Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, King references public opinion of historical figures who were deemed extreme. King calls Jesus extreme for love, Thomas Jefferson extreme for writing the Declaration of Independence, and Abraham Lincoln extreme for abolishing slavery. King's perspective clearly illustrates that extremism is not a new topic for America. However, the current political climate is especially polarized. Edward Kessler, a leader in interfaith relations, attributes increased polarization to the formation of online niche communities that allow opinions to be voiced without being exposed to other voices. Kessler's hypothesis prompts investigation into the topic. To what extent does the formation of online niche communities contribute to polarization? Political tribalism is a concerning trend in which political parties isolate themselves and work towards the idea of their own victory rather than the bipartisan benefit of the people. Current research in the field suggests that political polarization can be lessened by forming connections between political tribes. The development of communication has affected public opinion throughout history. In 1934, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, announced that radio stations were henceforth to be apolitical. However, media had to simultaneously satisfy the FCC regulations and captivate their audiences. As a result, conflict was either completely stressed or completely avoided. Stephen E. Gottlieb, an author for the Georgia University State Law Review, fills a gap in historical context for Kessler's article by discussing the change in media regulations that allowed news media to evolve to its current divided state. He writes that modern divided media leaves little way for people to discover the opposing views unless they take the time and trouble to find out. Today, without constrictive FCC regulations, media is able to generate and stress controversy without worrying about apolitical presentation. Therefore, it is most profitable to cater to a specific niche audience. Kessler augments Gottlieb's claim by identifying a temptation among mainstream websites to cut moderate posts in favor of the extremes to dramatize conflict. Unfortunately, heavily biased and divided media contributes to political polarization and tribalism, since media sources are divided between liberal and conservative lines. The internet has transformed social interaction and the formation of political tribes. A group of like-minded individuals is our niche community, or in a political context, a political tribe. Niche communities maintain the comfort of their members by insulating them from differing viewpoints. In modern times, social media has transformed to be a news media source in its own right. Kessler identifies that the ease of finding those with specific interests allows internet users to self-select into groups with similar opinions. Avoiding dissenting opinions is the most successful ploy of political tribes. Matthew S. Lewandowski, a political science professor at Fels Institute for Government, demonstrates the transformation and worsening of political polarization with Pew Research data from 2016, stating that for the first time ever, a majority of partisans view the other party very unfavorably. The American public does not benefit when political progress is inhibited by partisan fighting, so connections between political communities must be made in order to reach across the aisle. It is important to understand the psychological causes of political tribalism to develop an effective solution. Distrust of outsiders affects interaction and exacerbates political polarization. The Myers Psychology for the AP course textbook offers 3 essential vocabulary terms: in-group, out-group, and in-group bias. In-group members are us, or the people with whom we share a common identity. Conversely, out-group members are them, people who are perceived as different or apart from our in-group. Once these groups are defined, in-group bias, a favoring of our own group, is established. Muzaffar Sharif's Robbers Cave study serves as a microcosm for the current American political climate. The experiment consisted of 2 groups of 11 boys at a summer camp. The groups had little contact within the first stage of the experiment, in which community bonds were formed. The groups developed a rivalry almost immediately after coming into contact. Then, researchers incorporated competition between the groups. Group interaction became even more hostile, defined by name-calling, raids, and preparation for fights. Even before competitions were established, the boys developed obvious in-group biases. Eventually, the groups improved their relations when presented with challenges that rewarded collaboration. Today, in American politics, competition between Democrats and Republicans is stronger than the motivation for collaboration. Connections between political tribes break down the walls of isolation and misperception. Ultimately, Kessler argues that the internet should be used to foster dialogue between different groups of people. Lo Ai Ling, a contributing author of Countering Extremism, agrees that mitigating polarization relies on citizen action to bridge gaps, but advocates for a government structure to support those intentions. Ling offers Singapore's Community Engagement Program, the CEP, a program aiming to shore up the level of trust and cohesion among the various communities of Singapore. On the other hand, Lewandowski concludes that priming American national identity encourages people to see others as fellow Americans rather than opposing party members. Unifying Americans would create a new in-group that includes all Americans. Therefore, America must be careful to avoid a wave of nationalism and heightened xenophobia focused at the new outgroup, non-Americans. Since American polarization has evolved to include the general population rather than just politicians, any resolution must include all individuals. Therefore, a national structure similar to Singapore's Community Engagement Program is promising. It fosters communication among citizens of many identities, and this distinction prevents outbreaks of nationalism and xenophobia. An American CEP can oversee agencies that are customized to areas in which America struggles with polarization, such as religion, race, media, and politics. For religion, it can encourage interpersonal relationships between religious leaders, like what Kessler recommends. For race, it can ensure voices of color are represented in government. For media, it can impose legal consequences for media that publishes falsehoods. For politics, it would signal a clear acknowledgement of the fracturing that political polarization currently has on America, which would reduce the isolation of political tribes. Most importantly, an American CEP would focus on building connections between communities in order to reduce the political polarization that currently fractures the American people. Thank you.
Marie, thank you. Okay, so first question. How valid and reliable are the sources you've used? How do you know? And which sources didn't work?
Most of my sources are from political scientists, historians, or professors. I looked into their other writings, their education, and their professions to make sure that they were credible sources on the matter. When I used sources that were not scholarly, such as National Public Radio or ABC News, I used them in conversation with other non-scholarly articles or with scholarly articles to validate the information that they used.
Okay. Thanks. Second question then. If you had more time, what additional research would you conduct related to your issue of political tribalism?
Most of my additional research would go towards researching the practical application of some of the conclusions and solutions that experts proposed. For example, Singapore's CEP was established briefly after a terrorist plot was discovered and stopped. So since then, Singapore has not had to deal with the aftermath of a terrorist attack, so it has not been officially tested. Unfortunately, the organization can only be tested in the aftermath of a tragedy, which obviously we hope to never happen, but that information would be essential to improving other organizations that have similar aims.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.